The Mose Knows podcast, hosted by Cory Mose, greatly appreciates you for tuning into this week's episode. Enjoy.
Good morning.
And good evening, beautiful people. We got a ton of content to give you today. But of course, let's start off with what's going on in the college ranks with UT. Big news this week as the Longhorns are officially the number one team in the country, the first time since 2008 when they've been ranked number one in the nation, and they deserve it, right? They've won the point differential when it comes to all the top teams in the nation. They've beaten everybody that they're supposed to beat, and then they also blew out the reigning champs. And so I don't think there's any question about who's been the most consistent and the most dominant. Has been clearly the team in Austin. Speaking about Georgia last week, who's now dropped down to number 2, they had a struggle with Kentucky, and maybe Kentucky's good, right? Maybe we just don't know. Maybe when Texas plays Kentucky, we'll figure that out. But as for right now, people thought Kentucky wasn't a good football team. And so for Georgia to struggle against them was a big shocker, and which now propels UT to be the number one team in the nation. So let's kind of dive into that, Deon. Man, a couple weeks now, and they just have answered every question about this team. Can they defend the run? Yes. Did they get better in the secondary? Yes. Are they going to have a running game without C.J. Baxter? Yes. And so all these questions are getting answered, and now the question was, is Arch Manning legit? I think we can answer yes, right? After his performance against UTSA on Saturday. How'd you take the news? When did you see Arch Manning do his thing, Deon? I know you texted me right after Arch scored, and you said, man, Quinn's already out the game. You didn't know about the injury yet, but what did you see about Arch?
Yeah, I caught the game towards the end of the second quarter. I guess when he was having his slow moment. That's when I texted you like, yeah, this isn't looking too good. Like I said, I didn't know Quinn got hurt early in the game. But yeah, I caught it when he was, had a little struggle. And then as soon as I turned the game off, they started scoring more touchdowns. So I don't know, maybe I'm bad luck. But when I watched the highlights, I was like, oh, I didn't see none of this. This guy looks amazing. Oh, he ran the ball? Wow. This guy looked great. I see why people keep trying to get him to start. This guy looks pretty good out there. And I think that is the funniest part of this whole thing when, I know everybody wants to try to keep the QB controversy out the way. People on the inside. But it's just funny that this is how it lined up, this is how it played out, and then he ends up playing really well. So, hey, I feel like that talk was dying down, and now you give the naysayers something to talk about.
That's a great point, Deon. You're totally right. Like, that narrative was getting quiet, right? Everyone was trusting, okay, it is Quinn's team. Quinn's arguably the Heisman favorite, so there's no reason to talk about Arch. But then, of course, he goes down with an oblique strain. He's going to be out a couple weeks. Sark said on Monday that he would be week to week, and he hadn't even named Arch the starter for this week against ULM. And so I think he's, BSing. I think we all know Arch is going to start. There's no way Quinn's going to be healthy, but he's just trying to play the typical game that all coaches play when it comes to sound bites and who's going to start, who's not going to start. But anyways, he's going to be out for a couple weeks. So now Arch is going to be the starter, and it's going to be interesting to see if Arch plays really well. Will that narrative start to creep back in to the national conversation about, is there a quarterback battle? Is there not a quarterback battle? Is Arch the guy? Should Arch be the guy? I think that's all fugazi. I think this is Quinn's team. There is no quarterback battle. Everyone in that locker room believes Quinn is the leader and the captain of this ship. They mentioned that multiple times throughout the year, throughout the preseason, throughout camp. Quinn is the leader.
Yeah,
man. Oh, it is.
Yeah, but who cares? Everybody says.
Of course, everyone outside looking in, they're saying no, Arch is going to be the guy. So if you're in these locker rooms, man, they know. Everyone knows that Quinn is the leader, and I think once he gets healthy, he'll be back as the captain of this ship. And so until then, though, it's going to be exciting, right, to watch Arch do his thing, especially against the talent that he's going to be going against. I mean, think about this, Deon. I've said this multiple times now, but I feel like this is the quote-unquote perfect time for this injury to happen. If you look at Texas's schedule, you have Louisiana Monroe coming up this Saturday night game. Then you have Mississippi State coming in to DKR, who arguably is playing one of the worst football, or is playing some of the worst football in the SEC right now. And then you have a bye week after that. So this 3-week stretch where arguably Quinn should be getting and rehabbing and getting healthy is kind of the perfect stretch to do it before you have to go against OU, before before you had to go against Georgia, before you had to go against a squad like Texas A&M, like a Kentucky team that looked good against Georgia. So hate to have the injury with Quinn, but maybe this is the perfect time for it to happen, Deon.
All right, and my question is, I just thought about this.
Yeah.
Does Quinn get the injury-prone tag, the injury-prone badge? Would you consider him injury-prone?
I think so. And I think that's one of the reasons why Arch came back. And I mentioned this before the season started when everyone's like, is Arch going to transfer? Is Arch going to transfer? I didn't think so, because ever since Quinn's junior year in high school, he has gotten hurt. I mean, every single year he's had an injury where he played and he never finished a full season. And so, yes, I think that's one of the reasons why Arch came back, right? Because he knew at some point, or I guess he thought at some point, Quinn wasn't going to be healthy, because his track record shows in the last 4 to 5 years, Quinn is going to get hurt at some point of the season. And so do you want to put that badge on somebody injury prone? No, not really. But if you look at his history, that's facts. I mean, he hasn't finished a full season since his sophomore year in high school. And so, yes, I think that is a topic of conversation that we should talk about. But I also think that's a reason why Arch stayed at Texas, because he knew he was going to have his opportunities to start at a certain point throughout this season. And now the opportunity's here. And he's going against ULM. He can light the scoreboard up against them, light the scoreboard up against Mississippi State, and go home happy and know that, man, he's really good at this football thing. So, yeah, I think you could put that label on Quinn. I hate to do it, but I think that the track record shows that you can, and it's valid. So, yeah.
And against this ULM, I mean, it's ESPN has the predictor at 99% chance that Texas
What's
wins.
The spread? What's the spread?
Texas is minus 44.5. The over-under is, again, 52.5.
That's a bigger spread than UTSA.
Yeah.
Golly, man. Okay.
Yeah,
they think it'll be a blowout.
They think Arch finna first play, just let it fly.
Well, I mean, he looked phenomenal, Deon. I mean, there's one throw that he threw to Ryan Wingo on the sideline, not the touchdown, but there was a play where he's rolling left, has to throw with his right arm. You know, he's right-handed, so he's rolling left, square up his shoulders, throw it down the sideline as Wingo's moving on a corner route on the sideline. Just perfect throw right in the bucket. Of course, a 67-yard touchdown run is getting talked about all over the nation about how he's not a typical Manning with his speed. He got his speed from his mom, apparently. Shout out Mama Manning. But, yeah, I think there's a lot of things that still left on the plate for Arch that people didn't get to see. And that just makes it even more exciting to figure out how great can this kid be. And, of course, he has a great supporting cast. He has great people around him. And he also has Quinn Ewers in that quarterback room that's going to teach him as well throughout this time period. So very exciting stuff. And speaking about those two, right? And you spoke about the quarterback battle that everyone likes to pretend like there is one, even though there isn't one. But I want to play this soundbite from Monday's press conferences with Michael Taft, because he talked about who these two guys are off the field and why this whole quarterback battle thing isn't a conversation in the locker room, because the way these two quarterbacks handle themselves and carry themselves as men is something that coaches would say, I would want my daughter to marry. You know, that's everyone's coaches talk. But just listen to Michael Taft speaking about marriage, about how he considers these two guys a part of his life, and not just for this time being as a football player, but as just friends outside of football.
Individually, both of those guys are two of my best friends. Individually, both of those guys could be in my wedding one day. Those guys are amazing people. They care about the locker room first. They care about us first before anything else. And so, yeah, you could say why it's working, but I mean, we trust both those guys. I trust Trey and Cole Lord also. Whoever is quarterbacking our team, I trust all those guys. And to answer your question, Quinn and Arch are fabulous individuals.
Yeah, so clearly they have a special connection. Taft mentioned how he'll have both of those guys in his wedding. You know, that's how great of a person or a great people Arch and Quinn are. And so, yeah, this whole narrative that they're butting heads, they're going against each other. Arch has said multiple times that him and Quinn are best friends, which I found shocking. But he keeps saying it, so I got to believe it, right? And so, yeah, I am excited for this team, for what it can show. And a lot of young talent has been creeping through the cracks lately. To speak of Colin Simmons on the D-line, he's been showing flashes of greatness and what we all expected with the pedigree of coming in from Duncanville, the 5 stars that he had, the complete package of rushing the passer. And you can see it these last couple games. So as he continues to develop, it's going to be a problem. But one other thing I just wanted to touch on, Deon, was with that number 1 ranking, everyone seems to not care about it in the locker room. All the guys are just shrugging it off like it's nothing. And if you listen to the guys on Monday, there's one characteristic about their answers to being number 1 that kept on standing out to me. And I hope the viewers and the listeners can catch it before I say it. So listen to the soundbite from Sark, Jake Majors, center, and of course Michael Taff again, as they speak about what it means to be number 1 in the nation.
My thing is, I'm not going to change. We've had a very consistent messaging since the day I got here, and you have vision and goals of where your program's going to be in the future. This is what I was anticipating where we would be, and it was probably hard for a lot of other people to see when you're 5-7.
I kind of talked to O-line today about how, we can't be happy that we're number 1 in week 4. Because I've been 5-7. I know how college football works, and we haven't won the season. We've only been playing ball for about a month, and we still have a couple more months to go.
I think the coolest part about it is the guys that were here, the 5-7 team, know what it feels to be on a losing team, and so I think it just feels good to get the praise that we've deserved coming from 5-7 to right now being the number 1 team in the nation. But at the end of the day, if you're number 1 for week 4, that doesn't matter. We could be number 25 right now, and if we were undefeated on January 20th and we were still ranked number 25, then we're national champions. And I would much rather be a national champion than just ranked number 1.
So yes, clearly that 5-7 year, Deon, played a big factor for them mentality-wise, because they know what it's like to be on a losing team. They understand that this season can go any type of way. And so, yes, you're cool. It's great. It's all dandy. It's awesome that you're number 1 in the nation on week 4. But how much does that really matter? And even with this new playoff, it really doesn't matter, because back in the day, the polls did weigh a lot when it comes to who's going to play in the national championship. Now the polls don't mean jack squat. It all depends on who's going to win in the playoff. And so, yes, it's cool to say number 1 in the nation since 2008. It's cool to be like, yeah, we got the one next to Texas. But at the end of the day, this team knows this isn't the final end goal. This team also has experienced what losing feels like, and they don't want to experience that again. So the last thing they want to do is get a big head on their shoulders and misrepresent what Texas means on their chest. And they understand that the goal is to win a national championship, not to be number 1 in the nation in week 4. So a lot of things happening, Deon. But yeah, bro, we speak about locks of the week. Let's go into our NFL pick'em. Last week, my lock of the week did get locked up. You know what I'm saying? Washington Commanders, they were 2.5-point underdogs, and they were able to cover. Now, your lock of the week didn't really pan out that way, right?
I don't like how your voice changed. Why you can't just talk normal? Look, as we all know, last week was the week of upsets. Damn near mostly every game was either close or they got upset. So, hey, I guess everybody decided to, not bring their A game, and I paid the price for it. But
yeah, Deon picked the Colts
this week,
last week, in the Packers.
Yeah,
and the Colts couldn't move the ball, and Malik Willis. Man, they lost to Malik Willis.
Yeah, AR looked like a pea shooter or something.
Here we go. Yeah. We'll get to the Colts later on with the interview coming up. But yeah, bro, this week I'm in the lead now. After I scored 8 points, Deon scored 6, so I'm up by 1 point in our NFL pick'em coming into week 3. So let's see if I can keep the ball rolling this week. Let's start off with Cleveland. I picked them last week to win, and they did. Thank God. They played Jacksonville, but this week they got the Giants, arguably the worst team in the league. them or the Panthers. We'll get to them later. But I got the Browns because Giants suck. So I'm just going to keep rolling with that narrative.
Same sentiment, huh?
Same sentiment. Browns are 6.5-point favorites. I think they cover. I think they beat them by 7. And so, yes, I am picking the Browns. Deon?
Same here. I am a little nervous. Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones it seemed like they had a good little connection last week.
He had 18 targets. Yeah, they figured it out from week 1.
Crazy. Yeah, it seemed like Coach said, hey, don't throw it to nobody, but this guy over here with the guy.
Give it to Malik.
But yeah, I'm rocking with Cleveland. I trust their defense more than I trust Daniel Jones. So yeah. All
right, sounds good. Let's go to your lock from last week. Indianapolis Colts. They are playing the Bears. They are 1.5-point favorites over the Bears. Deon, do you got the Colts covering, or do you have the Bears coming up as underdogs?
At home, I went with Chicago. I'm hoping Caleb figures it out. I think it'll be close.
I like it. I'm going with Chicago as well. Colts can't stop the run. I mean, that's the biggest problem right now. They let the Packers run all over them. We thought that wasn't an issue because the Texans did the same thing. The thought process was because they had to defend against C.J. Stroud, so they let a lot of running holes come available. But they knew the Packers were going to run the football because that's all they could do, and they still couldn't stop it. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Bears because the defense for Indianapolis just doesn't look good. But who does sound good? James Boyd from The Athletic. We had a conversation with him about the Colts, about AR, how he's been able to not be effective so far this year, but also that run defense, like I just mentioned. And lastly, we also talked about some basketball things happening with the W as Caitlin Clark and Indiana Fever are closing in on a really tight playoff race. And so we're checking in about how they're doing right now. But a lot of topics to talk about with James Boyd. So here's my guy as we had our conversation earlier today. All right, beautiful people. I'm joined by James Boyd from The Athletic. Brody, how you living, bro? I always love having you on.
I appreciate you having me on. It's always good vibes, positive vibes. See somebody else look like me killing it as well. So motivated by you for sure. And I'm living a dream, as I tell people all the time. As a reporter in the NFL, life is good.
Life hasn't been too good for the Colts, though, the team that you're covering.
Exactly. Look, I'm not on the team, so I can only see for myself.
I know, man. 0-2 start for Indianapolis. Of course, week 1 against a really tough Texan squad. As we know, they looking solid right now. But last week was a little bit of a shocker to me, was that go to Green Bay, which I get it, Lambeau Field. But, of course, no Jordan Love. Got to go against Malik Willis. Can you just tell me, what do you think happened on the field on Sunday? And how has the team responded since then, losing against a Malik Willis team who people thought wasn't going to be able to move the ball against the Colts, but they did so on the ground?
Yeah, I think it was an embarrassing loss, to say the least. I joked before that game. I was like, man, if they lose this game, the sky will be falling in Indianapolis. And now I'm looking up everywhere I walk. I'm making sure nothing's falling because it was a really bad loss. I mean, everyone named Mama knew that coming into that game, Green Bay was going to try to run the ball because of Malik Willis's limitations as a quarterback. And that's exactly what they did. And what made it worse is, so on week 1, the excuse was, hey, we got C.J. Stroud on the other side. We have to try to take him away as well. So they got loose on the ground. Gave up 213 yards rushing. It's a lot of yards. They go into week 2, there's an emphasis on stopping the run. Like, hey, we know they're going to run the ball. We have to stop the run. They give up over 213 in the first half, so it was rough. And they ended the game, I believe, the Packers, that is, with 261 rushing yards. The Colts have given up the most rushing yards through 2 games of any team in the NFL this year. Their most over a 2-game span, which is 474 this year, since 2012. I want to say Anthony Richardson was 10 at that time. So, again, it was rough. And the offense didn't really do much better until maybe the final drive. It was a close game at the end. They tried to kind of make it interesting. But overall, just a dominant performance by the Packers and an embarrassing performance by the Colts where they didn't respond when they got hit in the mouth. And I think the most egregious part about it is it wasn't really like some fancy, trick play thing. It was, no, we're going to line up and take our big guys and run through all of y'all. And that's what they did over and over again, especially in that first half. And obviously it led to one of the more surprising wins in this early NFL season.
Yeah, you made a good point, though, right? Week 1, and that's what I thought. You got to protect the pass. And so there were a lot of running lanes for Joe Mixon and the Texans because you're trying to defend C.J. Stroud and all the weapons he got on the perimeter. But then you look at Green Bay and it's like, yeah, they're not even looking to pass. So of course, you getting the ball run down your throats when you know what's coming is a problem. And now with, correct me if I'm wrong, DeForest Buckner is now injured. He'll be out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You're losing a steady guy in the middle of that defensive line, arguably your best guy in the defensive line. And now the question is, how are you going to stop the run now? After losing a guy like that up front. So is that really a concern to this point with this team? Is that run defense?
Absolutely. It's the biggest concern in the locker room. It's something that the players are sick of hearing about, but you're going to hear about it as long as it's bad. And that's what it's been the first 2 weeks. And like you said, DeForest Buckner is a huge loss. This is a guy who, through his first 9 NFL seasons, had only missed 1 game due to injury. Had never missed a game in his 5 years in Indianapolis due to injury. He missed 1 due to COVID a couple of years ago. But now he's going to be out a minimum of the next 4 games, 4 weeks, and probably, I would say, longer. I mean, it's a high ankle sprain for him, according to league sources. And on top of that, man, I look at it like this. Josh Downs, who fortunately could come back or most likely will play against the Bears on Sunday and make his season debut, he had a right ankle sprain. I get it. Different positions, different body types. He's younger than DeForest Buckner, but just give people a decent timeline. Josh got hurt on August 7th in training camp. If he makes his season debut Sunday, that will be September 22nd. That will be 46 days, about 6.5 weeks. And so, again, just because Buckner is going to miss at least 4 weeks does not mean he's going to come back immediately from a high ankle sprain and go back to being an all-pro caliber player. So, at this point, you got to, kind of in wait and see mode. So we'll see how they respond. I guess the good part is you are kind of being faced with the same challenges last week where okay, the rookie quarterback is struggling. Caleb Williams hasn't been, lighting it up like a CJ Stroud did last year to this point. So, the Bears are going to try to run the ball, keep some pressure off of their rookie quarterback. And again, can you at least be serviceable? I mean, if you're not going to be, dominant, because their run defense has been really good the last couple of years. Even if you're not going to be good, you just can't be the worst in the league if you want to go out there and try to win your first game of the season. And you have to go out there and win because it's bleak right now. It doesn't seem like it, but looking at some research, teams that have started 0-2 dating back to 2015, there's been 74 of them. Only 8 have made the playoffs. Jeez. And so they're 0-2 right now. Yeah, it's 11%, basically 10.8%. That's not good. So again, if you go to 0-3, common sense would tell you that percentage goes down even more. So I'm just saying, man, it's now or never for this team to get back on track because this isn't the NBA, as I've learned. You drop 3 games, that could be you dropping your season.
Well, the bright news for this team is that the rest of the division outside of the Texans are 0-2 as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
exactly.
The Titans are 0-2 and the Jags are 0-2, just like the Colts. And so that if the Texans stumble up a little bit, which they do have a really tough schedule this year, and who's to say that the Colts don't go get them one, when they travel to Houston in their second matchup. And so that division is still on the table, of course, because we all know anything can happen at the wild South AFC South division. But, you brought up Josh Downs, right? And I think that's another topic of conversation I wanted to speak with you about because 2 facets, AR-15 hasn't really looked that well. Hadn't really looked that good, when it comes to Anthony Richardson. And he just hadn't been accurate, it felt like. It seemed like the only target that he feels comfortable with is Alec Pierce, funny enough. Him and A.D. Mitchell hadn't been on the same page. I know against the Texans, there was a couple touchdowns that were left off the board because they were just not on the same page. And again, last week, a couple routes where it just didn't seem like they're on the same page. And then you go to Michael Pittman, wide receiver 1, there's still some miscommunication there and some choice routes. And so I'm interested to know your perspective. How does Josh Downs fit into this offense when it comes to the comfortability of AR, but then also where do the snaps take away from, in your opinion? Is it an Alec Pierce or is it Adonai Mitchell that's going to get less playing time because Josh Downs could potentially be back this week?
I think that's a great question that you added or asked me because I think with Josh Downs, he gives you some more layups perhaps for Anthony Richardson, where he has an uncanny ability to get open in tight spaces. So he is their number 1 slot, receiver, and he has a chance to really make things simplify for Anthony. And I think we saw that throughout training camp a lot, where he looked like at times Anthony's favorite target because he knew, okay, if anything, goes wrong, I know this dude's going to be open every single time. And so that could obviously be a big help for him as he tried to find his rhythm throughout the season. And if Josh is able to come back, he told us in the locker room, like, hey, I expect to play Sunday, And I'm like, okay, let's hope the team doctors,
He caught
decide
his
that
number.
as well.
He said it
Players usually don't say that, And he cut his hair, and I'm like, man, are you going through something? What's going on? He got the cut and everything, and he's like, it's a new me, and I'm like, man, what happened throughout this? These 2 games you didn't play.
He found himself during this
Exactly,
time.
he found himself, and so I do think that'll take some snaps away from A.D. Mitchell, most likely of all the wide receivers, because even with some of the things that AR has had issues with outside of Alec Pierce with chemistry, it seems like his chemistry is the worst with A.D. Mitchell. It's not like it's a knock on A.D. Mitchell or knock on AR. It's just, I think it really speaks to the youth that AD has. I talked to him after the game in last week in Green Bay, and he was telling me, there are a few where it's an option route or it's a different read, and I'm just not making the exact same read as AR. And he said, I might have saw this, but he saw that. So they got to get more reps together. And then at the end of the day, he's got to catch the ball. I think AD last week, unlike in week 1, AR put one on him for would have been a first down on 3rd down, and he dropped it. And he was like, that to me is like a momentum play. If I can make this catch, keep the chains moving, we're looking for something to latch on to, we can keep it from snowballing if I make the catch, if I do my job. And to his credit, which, I mean, there is really no other option, but again, some players don't always handle it that well. He's handled the criticism well. AD has owned everything. He said he has to get better at it, but at the same time, it's like you can say all those things, but you have to go out there and perform and prove to the organization, to your coaches, to your quarterback that you can be trusted. And so I'm not like, down out on him. I think that he has a super bright future. Hell, he can go out here and might catch a 60-yard touchdown pass, because he's that talented. It's just making sure that, again, he's making the same reads as AR. And then AR trusting him as well, because I can't put it all on the receivers who, again, they had 5 drops as a team this past week, which tanked Anthony's completion percentage. And that's why I try to get too much into the narratives about completion percentage and accuracy. It's like, if they catch those 5 passes, he's not 17 for 34. He looks a lot better, you know what I'm saying, on paper. And maybe they even win the game. But on top of that, Anthony has to make better decisions too, because there were 2 passes, at least. I know he had a Hail Mary interception. I won't count that one because who cares at that point. But the first 2, one of them, he just missed. Alec Pierce was open on a crosser. He got a little bit of pressure. He just missed high, and that's what he does, throughout most of his interceptions or most of his inaccurate throws. He misses high. And then the second one was just a bad read. Tried to force it into Michael Pittman Jr., and it just wasn't there, and he paid for it. So he's owned it, but I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, Josh Downs is coming back. Like I said, A.D. Mitchell is still pretty young. I mean, he ain't going nowhere. And then you got to remember that Anthony, even despite all those things, gave them a chance to win the game at the end by taking them down. They made it a 1-score game, and they had a slim chance to come back and win. So again, got to go out there and play. But this Bears defense is no joke. They will not make it easy for him. Exactly. And so if you're gonna respond, like I said, you got to respond now.
Yeah, the Bears defense made C.J. Stroud look human. And so I can't wait to see what this matchup with the Colts looks like. And I thank you for that perspective. And this is exactly why we have you on, right? Because you can give us more insight. The 5 drops, right? When you talk about Anthony Richardson's completion percentage, of course, everyone's going to see that it was about 50%. But it's like, if you count those 5 drops, the outline and the outlook will look a lot different.
Exactly.
And it's still technically Anthony Richardson's rookie year, right? In my mind, you only played 4 games last year, 5 games, and so he's still learning about what NFL defenses look and move like. And you want to pair that with trying to get connected with the rookie receiver like Adonai Mitchell and get their timing down as well. It's tough. It's a tough thing to do, and so I totally understand your perspective there. And so before I get you out of here, though, I want to mention and talk about. A whole different sport, right? Women's basketball, Indiana Fever, because over there, it's getting down to crunch time, right? Playoff time is right around the corner. And ever since the Olympic break, the Fever are arguably the hottest team in the WNBA. And so just to give y'all a little stats, over the last 16 games, the Fever are 11-5 in those last 16 games. And 4 of those 5 losses have come from the Minnesota Lynx and the Las Vegas Aces, 2 of the top teams in the W, 4 of those 5. So technically they only lost to 3 teams, and those 2 teams are really, really good. And so when it comes to the Fever, first off, playoff push is a real thing. And arguably a conference title is in the conversation. Am I wrong? Because the way they're playing like one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, they definitely are. I think that they playing with a certain level of confidence we didn't see early in the season. They started 1-8, which seems like a lifetime ago, but it was rough. They were in the trenches, my boy. It was not looking good. But I think since then, obviously, Caitlin Clark has come on a lot since the Olympic break. She looks like a top 5 player in the WNBA. I'll keep saying that. I think that she will be a first-team All-WNBA member when it's all said and done. The stuff that she's doing is special. We see Kelsey Mitchell, who I joke is a walking bucket. She just wakes up and scores, and I think she should be double-teamed the moment she gets to the arena. That's how great of a scorer she is. Put her on the moon, she'll score there as well. She can score anywhere in any galaxy. She's that good and a great person. And then we know Aaliyah Boston, too, a dominant big player, a post player, and someone who, again, has morphed her game to be a better distributor, better in the pick and roll, and really accepting that her shots and stuff like that might not come as much as they did last year, but she's still accepting her role and making sure that when her number is called, she can go out there and dominate. So this team is very exciting. They're in a position where they don't really control their future anymore. I mean, they have one game left tomorrow night against the Mystics in Washington. And, I think if I had to, just guess, one reason they're 20-19 right now. One reason you might want to go out there and play Caitlin Clark or play them for a few minutes or whatever is, one, you want to get rhythm for the playoffs, but then also you want to try to end your season with a winning record, which they haven't had here in a very long time. They haven't made a playoff since 2016, which was the last year that Tamika Catchings was, a member of the team. She's a Hall of Famer, one of the GOATs. And so all that to say, the vibes are different. The feeling is different, and they want to do something different. And they're a dangerous team. Right now, the way it's kind of looking, they'll most likely face the Connecticut Sun, who they have beat this year. But if, some things happen, they could still potentially face the Aces in round one, which we know they've had their number. That's the one team in the W they haven't beat this year. And so I think most Fever fans are like, hey, give us the Sun and get a chance to, come back and try to win that way. But I told you before we got on the pod today is just, it would be really, really cool if whoever they face in the first round, the Fever win that first game, and then they force a game 3, winner take all, in Gainbridge Fieldhouse here in Indianapolis and in Caitlin Clark's first season. It's been loud like playoff games pretty much every game since they've kind of made that turn in the second half of the season. I can only imagine how loud it would be in a do or die situation like that, and I will surely be there to cover it. So I'm excited about it, but just overall, whether they win a game in the playoffs or don't make it back here for another home game, it's been a remarkably successful season considering where they started. What they've had, kind of thrown their way the past few seasons here in Indianapolis, being one of the worst teams, quite honestly, in all of pro sports in North America, to now, having one of the biggest stars in all of sports, and then being one of the more exciting teams, and really, again, a dangerous team. I don't think anybody wants to see the Fever.
They're legit.
Because on any given night, bro, they can get it done.
Yeah, bro. And the defensive efficiency lately has been phenomenal for the Fever. You look at their stats, they're arguably a top 3 team on defense ever since the Olympic break. And you mentioned Aaliyah Boston changing her game, adapting, Kelsey Mitchell becoming a bucket. Also, Lexi Hull, after the Olympic break, has been a
give her flowers
shooter,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Arguably, I think top 3 in shooting percentage since the Olympic break. And so she's also shooting lights out right now. And so a lot of great things in Indiana. Tyrese Halliburton's at every game, it feels like.
Yeah. And, me and him both.
Yeah, bro. Facts. So I'm excited to continue to see your coverage, James. And actually, I just want to plug something real quick because I know you recently dropped a feature story with Anthony Richardson. And so for anyone who wants to read it, where can they find that at?
They can check it out at theathletic.com or NewYorkTimes.com. I guess that's my official company who I work for. But yeah, check that out, man. I talked to him about, fatherhood before the season. I was very happy about that because I try to make sure that when we cover athletes, I'm sure you've done throughout your career, they're not just what they present to you on the field of the court. They are humans and they have lives outside of that. So I was the first person, I think, to kind of get Anthony to open up about being a dad, having Anthony Richardson Jr. in the world, that new motivation. And he was very vulnerable about it, telling me his fears, his hopes, and also what all this means on top of being the face of a football franchise. So Anthony's a great human being. I've been, given no reason not to believe that. And I tell people all the time, if he can be the player he is, or if the player he is the man he is, the Colts are in good hands because he is a great human being. Now it's about trying to become a great player. And again, that motivation from a kid is different from what, so he says. I ain't got no kids of my own. I'll take his word for it. But he's very proud of the fact that he is a father. And fun fact that I put in the story, he was telling me the only reason he doesn't have senior on his jersey is because he missed the deadline to change it. And to change it, he would have had to go out and buy all of the pre-printed Anthony Richardson jerseys, and that would have been like in the six-figure range. And he was like, "Nah, it ain't that deep."
Yeah,
so next year,
I'll wait another year for that.
Exactly. So next year, expect the Anthony Richardson. Right, exactly. So next year, expect the Anthony Richardson senior jersey out there on the Colts jerseys as well. And I guess if you already bought his jersey, you can have the retro version.
Well, thank you so much, James, for that insight. You said the Colts are in good hands with Anthony Richardson, but Athletic is in good hands with you, James. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I can't wait to have you back on the pod later in the year.
Anytime, brother.
Yeah, Deon, I felt bad because you requested James, and then you weren't able to be a part of that conversation, so my apologies.
Literally missed it by a couple minutes, but it's fine. I'm sure James will not be. It's not going to be James' last time on the pod, so... But it sounded like I had a great conversation. What was your favorite part about what y'all talked about?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway was how, he's still young, Anthony Richardson, right? Like, he's looking at, this is going to be his 20th game as a starting quarterback in his career, right? Not just NFL, but college, high school, 20th game. And so he's still a rookie in a lot of people's eyes. And now you have a guy who, one, hasn't played a lot of football in general. Then you talk about a guy who hadn't played a lot of football at the highest of levels, with a lot of young receivers as well. So a lot of things not working in his favor. And so it's going to take some time to have everyone on the same page, especially with a guy like Adonai Mitchell, who the Colts drafted to be a deep threat, to be a focal point in his offense. And they just haven't been on the same page at all this season. And so maybe with the addition of Josh Downs in this lineup is going to help out a lot, because that's a familiar face for AR. But we'll see, right? Against a Bears squad who played really well. They shut down Will Levis week 1, as we all assumed that was going to happen. But then they shut down CJ Stroud pretty well when it came to Sunday Night Football. They gave him fits. The only person that went off was Nico Collins. But outside of Nico, no one was really effective with that Chicago Bears defense. And so we'll see, right, if Anthony Richardson can move the ball against them. But let's keep on moving with our NFL pick'em. Speaking about Nico Collins and CJ Stroud, Houston, they are 3.5-point favorites against another 2-0 squad in Minnesota, who shocked a lot of people by beating San Francisco last week. Sam Darnold's career looks revived with Kevin O'Connell, which, by the way, I want to say I did call it. Kevin O'Connell. I don't trust Sam Darnold, but I trust the coach. And the coach is going to make sure he's in the right position to make the right plays. And so they're 2-0. Sam Darnold looks great, but I have the Texans covering this 3.5-point favorite, just because Justin Jefferson, big question for Minnesota right now. Will he play? Will he not play? It's looking like he's not going to play on Sunday. So who the heck is Sam Darnold going to throw the ball to? I have no idea, especially against his Texans defense, who has been flying around. So, yeah, I got Texans 3.5 points.
Same here. Simple. No JJ. I can't trust it. So, yeah, I'm going Houston.
Sounds good. Moving on. I can trust, surprisingly,
Derek Carr.
Like, it's crazy to say I can trust Derek Carr, because he has been slinging the rock. Shout out Clint Kubiak. So we're talking about Texans. Of course, Gary Kubiak is his father, former head coach for the Houston Texans. His son, Clint, is having a clinic in the league right now. He has the Saints looking like the Chiefs in 2018, 2019, like just slinging the ball around, scoring over 35 points by halftime against the Cowboys. Like, dude, Alvin Kamara looks unstoppable. I had to go against him fantasy last week. I hated that. Scored 45 points against me. But, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to move on. So they play the Eagles. They're a 1.5-point favorites at home against the Eagles, who, by the way, let Kirk Cousins drive down the field on them. And it didn't look good. And they should have ran the ball. Should they have not run the ball? That's a conversation. Saquon probably just should have caught the pass. So they're coming off a loss against Atlanta that a lot of people didn't think they should have lost. And so who you got, bro? Saints or Eagles?
I got to go Saints. They're at the crib. We know how New Orleans is when they're at the crib. That dome is something serious. I think that A.J. Brown injury is important to the Eagles. So, yeah, I got the Saints 1.5. I basically saying we think the Saints going to beat them by a field goal. So, yeah, I got them. I got the Saints.
That A.J. Brown point is a great point, Deon. Totally forgot that he was out, and so another guy that
found out in fantasy. Yeah, he's on number one draft pick. Yeah, that was my draft. Yeah, so,
I apologize.
Great point.
But yeah, I got New Orleans 1.5 points covering that at home. I mean, they're different at home, and so we're gonna move on to another 2-0 battle, which could not have guessed these two teams will be 2-0 come week 3. Los Angeles Chargers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Both of these teams are 2-0. It's going to be a slobber knocker. A lot of people like to call it that. Both the teams, they love to run the football. They love to play great defense, and they love to just control the time of possession. That's what Tomlin is known for. That's what Harbaugh is known for. And this team in LA, they have just embodied what Jim Harbaugh is, and that's playing tough-nosed football, running it down your throats, and don't turn the ball over, and play decent defense. And that's exactly what they've been doing these last 2 weeks, and that's why they're 2-0. Shout out J.K. Dobbins for reviving his career. He's probably the comeback player of the year, leading candidate right now. And so they're 2.5-point underdogs to Pittsburgh. Justin Fields has been announced as a starter again. We'll see how long that lasts. So Pittsburgh at home against the Chargers, 2.5 points. They're favorites. Who you got, Deon?
Got Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to be a close game. That's a Mike Tomlin-esque game.
Yeah.
I got Pittsburgh finding a way to ink out this win.
Okay. I actually have the Chargers. I think Harbaugh and them boys show something. I think Herbert, if he plays, hopefully he plays.
I think that was the big thing for me. Herbert.
Okay.
It looks like Herbert is leaning towards not playing. So yeah, I had to rock with Mike.
He's a tough guy. I think Herbert's a tough guy. He's gonna fight through it. I think he's gonna play, and they're not gonna ask a lot out of him because they run the football a lot now. So I got Chargers covering the spread, 2.5-point underdogs. Deon has Pittsburgh. Can't wait to see how that plays out. Next up, Baker Mayfield, another 2-0 team versus Denver, a team that hasn't looked at all competent on offense with Bo Nix and that young core group. But 6.5 points is a lot of points for the Buccaneers to cover. I think they do, Deon, because they've looked that great. What about you?
Yeah, this is an easy yes for me. Rocking with Baker, I'm on the Baker train. He looks. I mean, bro, did you see the play where he
little wiggle
juke move?
Yeah, bro. All right, Baker.
Yeah, I'm sold, brother. I'm rocking with Tampa. I think they'll cover this. I think Mike Evans will probably have a 100-yard day.
Say less, man. I need that for my fantasy.
Godwin looks amazing too.
Godwin, number 1 in fantasy right now for wide receivers. In case you didn't know, Chris Godwin is the number 1 wide receiver right now in fantasy. So could it fool me? I had no idea he was going to have a season like this so far. But moving on to Tennessee versus Green Bay. Tennessee is 0-2. They haven't won a game. Green Bay is 1-1 right now after beating, surprisingly, like I said, the Colts last week with Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis comes back to earth this week as they go against the number 1 team defense in the league right now with the Tennessee Titans. They're 2.5-point favorites. I think the Titans do cover that 2.5 points, and they beat Malik Willis and Green Bay.
I got Green Bay.
Oh,
okay. I think Will continue his craziness.
Antics.
Yeah, his antics. I think he'll continue his antics. And again, I think this will be a close game for sure. So I think they'll find a way to make this close, and Green Bay will cover.
Well, say less then. Speaking about Will Levis's antics, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into all his theatrics, I guess you could say, on the football field with my guy Ben Arthur from Fox Sports. We had a conversation with him about what the heck is happening down there in Tennessee. Why is Will Levis just throwing the ball to the other team? And how does Brian Callahan, the head coach, feel about that? Everything. And also we dove into that running back room as well with Tony Pollard doing his thing down there. Not really a 1A, 1B type thing. It just seems like a 1A and 1A only for Tony Pollard in that running back room. So what's going on offense in Tennessee? Ben Arthur has the answers. All right, beautiful people. We are now joined by Big Ben Arthur, the Fox NFL reporter. Ben, I feel like it's been a minute since I last seen you, talk to you. How you been? How you living?
I'm good, bro. Thanks for having me on again. Really enjoyed the last time I was on with you, and I'm in the presence of greatness, so it's always good to come on.
Appreciate it. We're gonna take it. I'm gonna take the compliment for sure. What you? Oh, okay. There you go. Let's get into the action. We got a lot to talk about with the Titans a lot of things going on right there in Tennessee, right? Will Levis seems to be throwing the game every single game so far. Coach Callahan is losing his mind on the sidelines, trying to figure out what the heck is going on with his QB. From your perspective, can you just give me some insight about what is happening in Tennessee right now when it comes to the quarterback, and how has Will Levis kind of messed up the chemistry, if there's any mess up with the chemistry with the offense? Where have you seen the insight about what this team is looking like through 2 weeks of football?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Will is he's just trying to play hero ball when he doesn't need to. That's something like Brian Callahan has reiterated to him a number of times. Like, there are 11 guys on the field. You don't kind of need to do everything. And we've seen in that opener against the Bears, right, that pick six. And then this past weekend, a game I was at against the Jets, knocking on the end zone to take the lead up to 2 scores. And you just take the sack there, right? Like, even if you do complete that lateral, like what's the net positive of a play like that? So I think it's just certain situations where Will's competitiveness is kind of getting the best of him. Like, you look at actually the totality of the way he's played, it actually hasn't been all that bad. It's because of these 2 crazy boneheaded what are you doing type plays that overshadows kind of everything else. Like in the Bears game, first half, he played really well. Yeah. He actually, from a raw number standpoint, he actually played better than Aaron Rodgers last week. And so it's just
CJ Stroud as well.
Yeah. So it's just like these certain situational football type moments that he needs to work on. And yeah, that's something they're working through right now. And I think, to Brian Callahan's credit, he acknowledged, look, I'm human, right? That's what everyone was thinking when we saw the cameras go to him and kind of the way he responded. And, he kind of wishes maybe publicly it was kind of a different image going out there, but he still has confidence in Will. And Will spoke to reporters here in Nashville today, and he doesn't have a problem with it. What Brian Callahan said to him is what he was saying to himself in his head as he was going back to the sideline after that fumble. So in terms of lost confidence, I don't think the Titans have lost confidence in him. We have to kind of look at the macro and realize that it's still mid-September. It's just 2 games in, a lot of newness. And Will isn't the only issue with the Titans right now. They have a lot of issues with special teams and the O-line, and this receiver room that was supposed to be the best in the Tennessee era, the franchise hasn't really shown up so far. So they have a lot going on. But yeah, I think with Will, it's just not needing to play hero ball in certain situations, because the sum total of the way he's played actually hasn't been all that bad.
Yeah, and you talked about Callahan's response. Sorry, Deon. I just wanted to toss to this soundbite because, Callahan talked about it after the game about how this is back-to-back weeks, how you had a kind of bonehead play, which arguably cost him the game. I know it did against Chicago, maybe not so much against New York, but it did take points off the board. And so let's listen to this soundbite from Callahan after the game, speaking about Will Levis and that play where he fumbled against the Jets.
I think the camera caught it pretty clear, if I had to guess. So, I was upset. It was dumb. It was the same exact thing he did last week, and he cost us points in the red zone. And that is what it is. He's a grown-up, and he knows better. And so, I was really irritated that he cost us 3 points in a game that we probably needed it.
All right, so a lot was said there in that soundbite. Ben, when you heard it for the first time, what were your initial thoughts?
I mean, the frustration was just so visible, or so, it was coming out the ears, his demeanor. He was still very, very pissed about that, to say the least. And yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing where you do something so incredibly stupid in the first game of the season, and you think there's no way he could possibly do it again, and then he does it again.
Beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold my mayo.
Yeah, hold my mayo in Will's case. It was just the frustration kicking in, and yeah, I mean, this is a new coach too, right? 37-year-old new head coach. He's trying to get things in order, lay his foundation, and you can't have that, right? Yeah. So I think it was just the frustration was just the biggest thing that came across to me in that clip.
Deon, you had something?
Yeah, Ben, I just wanted to ask about the running back room. I know that it was supposed to be, I mean, going into the season, supposed to be split, but it looks like Tony's been getting a lot of the action. Do you have any thoughts on that, or any information on why that is, or just any information on that?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, as the Titans kind of articulated, it was going to be like a RB1A and RB1B type situation. We haven't seen that manifest itself to this point. After the opener, Brian Callahan did talk about wanting to get Tajay the ball more. So I know that's something they're going to work on just moving forward. But I mean, now Tajay Spears is hurt. He's dealing with an ankle injury. Wasn't spotted during the portion of practice today, open to the media. And so yeah, I mean, that's I guess what we're gonna see, just how that plays out. But I think in Tony, you have more of an established commodity. We know what he did in Dallas. He's an 1,000-yard rusher. To this point, he's really been largely their most dependable offensive skill player. And he actually leads the team in catches right now, not any of the receivers. It's Tony Pollard who leads the team with 8 receptions to this point. So yeah, they're going to continue to lean on him. I think we're seeing more of a run game than we maybe thought entering the year, just with the whole emphasis on wanting to pass the ball. But because of the issues there, they've had to lean on Tony, and I think they'll continue to do so more now that Tajay is hurt. So we'll kind of see what that looks like going forward. I'm assuming, Deon, that's good news for your fantasy team.
Oh my God! Hey, after a rough week fantasy wise, that me and Corey will talk about a little later in the show. This is great news. I mean, this is amazing news. Wow! Thank you.
Not good. I'm going against Tony this week, bro. There's not good news for me. Not at all. Well. Oh my goodness. Anyways, let's not talk about fantasy just yet. I do want to continue this conversation. We got a little bit of time left with you, Ben. This defensive line, right? That was supposed to be one of the strengths for this team. T'Vondre Sweat getting drafted. Jeffrey Simmons, arguably the best player on that defense, and he anchors that D line. But man, the Jets just ran all over them when it came to the game on Sunday. And it's kind of similar. We were just talking to James Boyd, who covers the Colts for the Athletic, and they're having the same issues with defending the run over there in Indianapolis. And so, has that been a shocker? Do you feel like one of those weaknesses is that run defense for Tennessee so far?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 2 games in totality to this point, it actually hasn't been that bad. I mean, they're actually number 1 in total defense right now. They're allowing just 3.8 yards per play. The takeaways aren't there for this point. They only have 1 takeaway in 2 games. But overall, the defense has been solid. Yeah, the run defense in particular could be a little better. I think they're allowing 4 yards per carry right now, but I'm not too concerned about that.
All right.
I think T'Vondre Sweat is going to continue to I mean, he's looked pretty good to this point. I think he's only going to continue to improve, and we've already seen a number of instances where just his size and his presence is really being felt by the centers and the guards he's going up against. Really making that interior of the pocket really tight for these quarterbacks. And so I don't think that's something I'm too concerned about. They have the personnel to play well up front. And I think adding Ernest Jones, who they traded for from the Rams, is starting to get in his groove a little bit, and I know he'll help in the run defense side of things as well. But I'm not, honestly, the defense is the least of my concern for the Titans, because they have, apart from that, game-winning drive for the Jets last week, I mean, they've been pretty dominant outside of takeaways, so I'm not really concerned about that.
And so where do you feel like the production will come offensively in that wide receiver room? I mean, you go out and get Calvin Ridley. He hasn't really been who you thought he would be. D-Hop has been hurt, and so that's also played a factor. But where do you feel like there is an opportunity for growth when it comes to the passing game?
Yeah, I think Calvin Ridley, you said it. I think he's the guy they need to depend on right now. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't look quite right to start the season. I think you consider his age, 32, and working himself from the knee injury he suffered very early in training camp, hasn't practiced a whole lot. I think it might take him a little bit of time to get going. So Calvin really is really the guy, the explosive receiver on the outside. I think they're going to need to depend on. And Calvin really has spoken at length about, hey, like Will and I, we're still trying to figure it out. Like the whole timing aspect of things. I think the last time I was on the show, Corey, I talked about how Cory and Will, Calvin and Will aren't quite.
Hey, don't strap me up real quick.
But I think the last time I was on the show, I was talking about how Calvin and Will just aren't completely in sync yet. They've had a lot of misfires, and so I think that connection, they're going to continue to work that. There was a drop on a deep ball that Calvin had, but then he also had that ridiculous, I think 40-something. The window was insane. Yeah, how even so? We still that you see the upside there too, right? So I think Calvin is going to need to be the guy they depend on, with D-Hop maybe kind of being slower to start the season.
Well, one bright spot for the Titans right now is that everyone outside the Texans in that division is also 0-2. So the division is wide open for the AFC South for the taking. We'll see if D-Hop can get healthy. We'll see if Tajay Spears can get healthy so they can have a duo in that backfield and not just depend on Tony Pollard. And if the defense can continue to do what they're doing, they are set up for success, because we all know defense in this league is very important, especially when the offenses haven't been looking so well around the whole landscape of the NFL. But of course, Ben, I always want to thank you for your time. And where can people see your work at, bro?
Yeah, at Ben Y. Arthur on X and on Instagram and Threads. And then on foxsports.com, you go to the personalities page, find my name, Ben Arthur. And yeah, that's how people can tap in with me.
And shout out to the podcast, bro. I want to, plug that in as well, man. Where can people hear the pod?
Yeah, so called Pinnacle Code, focused on empowering kind of second generation, 1.5 generation Black Americans through conversations around identity and achievement. I'm second generation Ghanaian American, so that's a kind of a passion thing for me, and that's Pinnacle Code on YouTube, at Pinnacle_code on Instagram, and at Pinnacle Code on X. So.
Well, man, you're cracking the code here on Mose Knows, so thank you so much, Ben, for being a part of this, man.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me.
A lot of great stuff there by Ben, man. I'm glad that he's plugged into Tennessee because, man, they are a topic of conversation around the league right now, Deon.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of these teams that are playing really bad, it's like they have good pieces, good players sprinkled in, and it's like you just do not expect them. A lot of these teams that are 0-2, I was not expecting this to be their start. Especially with this team, I thought they picked up some good pieces off season, and it does not look like it's translating. So yeah, Corey, what was your favorite part of what he mentioned about?
I think
the fact that there's a meme is just, I don't know. I just can't get over this, man. But what was your favorite part?
Man, I think it's cool to hear that. Like Will knows. Will knows what he's doing. He knows that it's not acceptable. That you can't do it. And, Ben mentioned how, in the press conferences that Will has acknowledged that he's doing what he shouldn't be doing. And the question is, can he rewire his brain to not do those things? We'll see. All right. We'll see. Because if he continues to do these type of things and lose games for this team, that is a really good team, like you mentioned, Deon. And Ben even talked about it. They have the number 1 total defense in the league. And they're 0-2. Like, how does that happen? I'll tell you how. Will Levis. He's throwing the ball to the other team. And so, yes, I think if we continue to see these trends with QB1, he won't be QB1 much longer. I think if you hit week 6, week 7, and you're looking at a 1-6, a 2-4 type team, hey, Mason Rudolph could come calling, right? Which is disgusting to hear. That Mason Rudolph could be a starting quarterback in this league. But anyways, let's move on. Great interview from Ben. Thank you so much, Ben, for hopping on. Miami versus Seattle. No Tua this week. Miami is 6.5-point underdogs to the Seattle Seahawks at Seattle, by the way. Who you got?
Seattle looked really good this past week. I'm definitely thinking, does Miami have some injuries?
You got Tua. And Raheem Mostert's out.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna rock with Seattle. Geno looked really good last week.
He did. He looked really well. I'm gonna go with Miami though. I'm not gonna lie to you. No Tua, I get it. But last time we seen Skylar Thompson, I believe it was in the playoff game against the Bills. We had to come in for Tua. And
I remember.
It was a close game.
Yeah.
People thought it was gonna be a blowout. It was a really close. It was a one possession game. So I think Skylar can do it. I think he can keep them in this game against Seattle. And Dolphins defense ain't that bad. I don't think. I mean, the Bills just ran all over them, but hopefully Kenneth Walker doesn't do the same thing for Seattle. We'll see. But yeah, 6.5 points. That's a lot of points to me. So I'm gonna go with Miami as the underdogs. You're going with Seattle. Love that. Detroit versus Arizona. Arizona's coming off a phenomenal game as Kyler Murray stopped playing Call of Duty and started picking up the playbook. He put up a lot of points for him and Marvin Harrison in fantasy. And then Detroit is coming off a performance that they're not really proud of. But, maybe it's a bounce back game in a dome again against Arizona. So we'll see how that plays for Jared Goff. But I have Detroit covering. I think it's a get right game as they beat Arizona by more than 3.5 points. That's my guess. Deon?
I originally was rocking with Arizona, but I think I'm gonna go with Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the connection from Kyler and Marvin looked really good this past week, but I just can't. Detroit is supposed to be like a Super Bowl favorite. They can't lose. They can't lose 2 in a row, right? So
yeah, you think so?
Yeah, that's what. I know, right?
Yeah, you say that. You say that, then let's talk about this next team that were Super Bowl favorites and have lost 2 in a row. Baltimore versus the Dallas Cowboys. Man, I am really intrigued with this matchup because you have a team in Baltimore who's 0-2. There's no way, right? There's no way they become 0-3, right? Right? Versus a Cowboys team who looked sensational against Cleveland. Everyone's talking about, oh man, Mike Zimmer, his defense, moving Micah Parsons around. Man, he really caused a lot of problems for Deshaun Watson. Cool. Derek Carr came into town. Who that said they gonna beat them Saints? Not the Cowboys. Man, just bodied them from start to finish. Alvin Kamara ran all over that defense. And so, man, oh man, this is a sensational matchup to see who's going to be more mid, right? And so Baltimore versus Cowboys. Baltimore, they are 1.5 favorites away in this one. They're going into Arlington in Cowboy Stadium, and they're the favorites over the Cowboys. And so, Deon, who you got? 1.5.
It's funny because I think whoever loses this game, man, the media is going to be all over them. boy, it's going to be all over them. I think even though this team does not have somebody like Kamara as far as a running back, I think I'm going to go with the Ravens.
Okay.
I think I go with the Ravens. I think Lamar, I think that everybody saw the recipe is, bro, I was watching the clips. Dallas's offensive line was just getting pushed around. It's crazy. Like getting pushed back 5 yards before running back even getting touched. I'm hoping that, you have somebody as dynamic as Lamar. I feel like Lamar and Henry, they can equal out to be Kamara, and, it's going to be another. I don't want to say hopefully it's not a crazy blowout, but I think the Baltimore covers that, being 1.5 favorites.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Baltimore covers just because I just don't see John Harbaugh in this team. This team is too good to be 0-3. That's as simple as that. Like, I don't see them losing 3 straight. So that's why I'm going Baltimore there. I didn't see the 49ers losing to Minnesota last week. So what about this matchup? San Francisco versus the LA Rams, who looks depleted right now in that wide receiver room. San Francisco is 7.5 point favorites. Who you got for that one?
Yeah, simple. We got to go with the San Francisco. I know it's a 7.5 is a lot, but this Rams team they're losing people left and right every week. Matt Stafford don't have a receiver to throw to now. I don't know who's their running back.
Kyron Williams, he's still healthy.
Yeah, he's good, but I can't see this. Yeah, I think San Francisco is going to have a good day against this Rams team.
Hey man, shout out Jordan Whittington. He may get a bunch of touches this game. Shout out, man. You might want to look at him for the waiver wire. With all these wide receivers hurt, Jay Witt may be able to step up. He had a great preseason, clearly had a connection with Matt Stafford. So we'll see. Just throwing that out there. But like you said, bro, I don't see them moving the ball against San Francisco. And also, 49ers are coming off a loss. So that doesn't help their cause either. They're trying to get back into the winning column. And lastly, my last point for this and why I think San Francisco does win by more than 7.5 is because Kyle Shanahan is 10-4 against Sean McVay as they matched up against each other. And so clearly Shanahan has his number. And I don't think with the depleted roster, McVay is going to be able to get over the hump against Kyle Shanahan this time around. So yeah, I got the 49ers as well. Moving on to a team that won this past week on Monday night that should they have won? I don't know. They did, though. All right, you got to give them credit. You got to give Kirk Cousins credit for driving down the field with limited amount of time, finding Drake London for the touchdown. Bijan looked good, as always. Atlanta Falcons, 4.5-point underdogs to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Falcons are at home. The Chiefs are going to Atlanta. So, who you got there, Deon?
I got Atlanta.
Okay.
I think Chiefs love – I told Corey before the pod, the Chiefs love to just keep the game close and then just take your whole emotions and soul at the end by, I don't know, the refs helping them out, a field goal, whatever the case may be. I think Atlanta finds a way to cover 4.5.
Yeah, it's not just the Chiefs either. Atlanta loves close games. I mean, all their past 2 games have been under 3 points as well. And so, yes, I agree. Both these teams love to have tight games. That's why this spread of 4.5, I'm going towards Atlanta and not towards Kansas City. And I just think that, Atlanta's figuring it out on offense. I think they're starting to kind of realize, let's put Kirk Cousins under center. Let's do a lot of zone reads. Oh, I guess I'd say zone run game. And stretch the defense out a little bit, and it's been successful. So we'll see if that continues against Kansas City. And so let's go on to our next topic of conversation against a team that made headlines this week. Carolina is going against the Las Vegas Raiders as 6.5-point underdogs, and they will have a new quarterback under center for the Panthers. Andy Dalton will get the start as big news. Canales, head coach, has benched Bryce Young. Shocking to me. 2 games in, already benching the kid, former number 1 overall pick from a year ago. He's not getting any more starts for the time being. And now the new starting quarterback will go against Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins on that D-line for Las Vegas. A tough week 1 matchup to be thrown into this situation. But, Deon, who you got for this one?
Man, yeah, like you say, tough first game to start. I know Andy Dalton has been excited in interviews, but this Raiders defense they're menacing. And Gardner Minshew knows how to do one thing, and that's get that man Devontae the ball. So I'm going to go with the Raiders covering 6.5. It's going to, this one, it has me a little anxious because I think Andy Dalton is going to find a way to get that peel to that boy Adam Thielen. And, fantasy owners is going to be good. It's going to be like the old days, baby. But yeah, I got Raiders minus 6.5.
I'm not going to lie to you, bro. I got Carolina. I think with the newfound juice that the Red Rifle will bring into this team, they're going to cover 6.5. They may not win. I don't need them to win. I just need them to cover 6.5. And I think they do, just because of the Red Rifle. You know what I'm saying? Shout out Katie, shout out Texas. Andy Dalton gets the job done, and he's able to find those targets down the field. And so to dive deeper into this topic of conversation, let's get one more guest. Why not, Deon, right? Why not bring one more person on? F it, bro. We got a sports reporter and anchor from WRAL, Chris Lea. He's also a play-by-play for CBS Sports. And lastly, he's a big documentary guy. He's able to produce a lot of documentaries. If you haven't seen some of his work, he has a beautiful documentary about the stadiums in North Carolina and the history behind where they're fixated at, location-wise. A lot of areas have some historical black ties to where they're placed at. And so it's a great documentary. I would suggest you go watch it on his Twitter. But yes, Chris Lea is now going to join us as we talk about the debacle in Carolina right now. All right, man. My newfound friend, Chris Lea from WRAL, is in the building now. Chris, man, you
brothers from another mother right here, you know?
Hey, you know the vibes. You know the vibes. Thank you for your first appearance here on Mose Knows, man. Really appreciate it. We've been traveling around, I guess you could say, the AFC South. The last couple of interviews, we had James Boyd talking about the Colts, Ben Arthur talking about the Titans, but we're going to go up to now the other South, the NFC side, though, for the Carolina Panthers, and a lot of noise out there with the quarterback position. Just first off, what are the vibes around the benching of Bryce Young? And you're in that locker room. What has that atmosphere been like?
Yeah, as far as the Carolina Panthers are concerned, it's, of course, everybody's sad, right? Like this was supposed to be the year that they felt like they could take that next step. And they have, Dave Canales in there. He's so positive, has all the positive vibes, and everybody loves him. And, they were expecting, even if they didn't win the last 2 games, expecting at least to be competitive and to look better than what they did last year. And they ended up looking worse than what they did last year. So the locker room is still kind of, it's almost like it's dumbfounded. It's sad. Like they didn't know what was going on. They felt like they were going to come out a lot better than before. As far as the community and the people around the Carolina Panthers, it's a lot of the same, man. Like they're not really looking at this. Like Bryce Young is the one who's kind of catching the strays right now, but the bullets are really aimed towards the owner, David Tepper. Since David Tepper took over in 2018 as the owner of this franchise, they have the worst winning percentage in the NFL. And not that the Carolina Panthers were this amazing franchise beforehand, but 3 years before he bought it, they had a Super Bowl appearance and were 15-1 in the regular season, right? And so, things were kind of moving well, and the Panthers were all that team you can count on them. 1 year they missed the playoffs, the next year they make the playoffs. 1 year they miss the playoffs, the next year they make the playoffs. So there's a saying that's going around here saying, make the Carolina Panthers mediocre again, because we'll take mediocre over missing the playoffs since 2018 and literally being the worst franchise in NFL football.
Yeah, you had the worst record and also the most firings for the head coach as well.
Yes.
Tepper's a loose cannon, right? But I will say this, when it comes to the decision, to me, and let me know if I'm wrong, but from the outside looking in, it's almost like Tepper's finally letting his foot off the gas when it comes to controlling what's inside the locker room, because that has been a problem of the past. Because I think when it comes to Canales, he doesn't make that move if he doesn't have full control of his team to bench Bryce Young. And so do you think that's the same, how Tepper's allowing his head coach to finally be a head coach?
Yeah, and I'm sure David Tepper was clued in on it, and he was in on everything as well. But yeah, he's he hasn't been as visible to the media. Normally, you see him on the field before the games with him and his wife, and they're going around and talking to the PSL owners and talking to some of the dignitaries and things there on the field. Didn't see him against the Chargers on the field at all. Normally, you see him sometimes after the game in the hallways and stuff like that. The media members hadn't seen him. Right. I saw a report out of Charlotte that he made a quick appearance at practice today, kind of talking to some players, and then he was out. So he's trying not to be seen, trying not to be heard, which is good, but it feels like too little too late, right? Because, he's been really inputting a lot of this. We take this back. I have a podcast called Panthers Playbook, and we take this back all the way to when, and at the end of 2019, he basically kicked Cam Newton out the door. And after that, the Carolina Panthers, since 2020, has had 7 different starting quarterbacks. And so there's no stability in that position. And a lot of that is due to David Tepper and the way he meddles in things.
Oh, my goodness, man. I know that.
These are some crazy stats.
Yeah.
These stats are not good. Like, I haven't heard one good stat.
No.
In this situation, I haven't been able to watch any of the Bryce games. I'll admit that. But in this situation, are they using him as a scapegoat for their bad performances, or has he been playing that bad?
I think last year he was a scapegoat for bad performances. Last year was a mess. They hired Frank Reich, as you guys know, who was fired from the Colts the year before. But David Tepper steps in and says, hey, I want you to go out. Don't get your guys. Get some of the best people from all over. And that's cool. It sounds good in theory. But what ended up happening was you had a lot of different people on the offensive side of the ball who had different philosophies. So in Bryce's rookie year, and let's remember he was a rookie last year, he had coaches that were telling him different things. There were different philosophies on how to approach the game and how to see the defenses and how to do those things. So he was confused last year. So you had a situation where coaches were going to David Tepper, snitching on other coaches to Tepper. So it was a weird vibe with the coaches. So that's one. And then you had an offensive line that let everything through. So Bryce Young was running for his life every play. Then when he did actually get a pass off, he had receivers who weren't getting open or weren't even catching the ball. There's one play where Jonathan Mingo last year literally catches the ball in bounds, somehow or another swings his body out of bounds, and if he would have just put his feet straight down, it would have been a catch. But somehow or another, he was in bounds and swung himself 5 yards out of bounds. And so it was like the crazy stuff like that. So I always said that it was hard to blame last year on Bryce Young. Panthers went out and they, made the line a lot better. Right now, the offensive line is 5th in the NFL in protections according to PFF. They got more receivers, better receivers to help out with that. And so now you have Dave Canales, and he has his people. So there's one voice for Bryce Young. And Bryce Young came out the last 2 games and stunk it up. And I think a lot of it has to do with what he went through last year. Like, that guy, I think right now has his confidence shot. He's probably, I don't want to say scared, but like last year he was getting hit a lot. He got sacked 65 times. But even through all of the bad stuff last year, him and Justin Herbert are the only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history to have their first 11 starts where they completed 20 or more passes in each game. So as bad as the line and the receivers and all that were last year for the Carolina Panthers, Young was still like hitting dudes accurately. And ever since, that season and we start seeing what happened this year, that accuracy somehow went away. That lets me know that he is not confident in himself. He's not confident in what's being called. He's not confident in the people in front of him. I think he just needs time, but he no doubt stuck it up. And the last 2 games is definitely on him. But a lot of it, I think, is holdover from last year.
I think it's crazy, right? Looking back to last year I guess after he got drafted by Carolina, the conversation was, man, look at what's around him when it comes to that coaching staff. Like you said, Frank Wright, a guy who's won in the NFL. His quarterback's coach is Josh McCown, who, coming from a Texans fan myself, the thought process was Josh McCown would have been one of the offensive coordinators for the Texans pretty soon, right? Because of all the pedigree that he had going up the coaching ranks and all the knowledge that he has being a backward quarterback in the league. But then as the year went on, his rookie season, you saw it. Like you said, miscommunication in that coaching staff, which then trickled down to the QB1, and he just looked out of place at times, but also his supporting cast didn't look great either. But then you go get Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh, you draft a guy like Jatavian Sanders at tight end and try to help out the passing game from the middle of the field. You draft Jonathan Brooks, who probably going to be healthy in 5 or 6 weeks.
And then Xavier Legette from South Carolina.
And so you get guys and you get a better offensive line, and you thought, like you said, better production. But that just hadn't been the case. It's been worse production. I mean, first pass intercepted. I mean, that's crazy. And so I'm wondering, like, you talked about his confidence. What was the, vibe in the locker room once the news came out? And I guess what was your initial thoughts once the news came out that he would be benching? Now he's back up for Andy Dalton.
Well, we had a chance to hear from some of the players on Monday and even, Sunday after the game when I was in the locker room. I haven't been in the locker room since Sunday, but like afterwards, there was a lot of guys. I mean, Robert Hunt, one of the guys that they acquired in free agency on the offensive line, Adam Thielen, they were all saying things like, this isn't on Bryce. This is 11 guys who all aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And once we get everything together, Bryce is going to be fine. That's what their message was. But also you could see the frustration on the sideline. So it's one of those situations where they're saying one thing, but during the game, you have Adam Thielen, who never shows frustration, showing frustration. You have Deontay Johnson, who's known for showing frustration in Pittsburgh, showing frustration. You know what I'm saying? So, they're saying the right things right now. But I think everybody sees it that right now Bryce isn't right for whatever reason. He probably just needs to sit for a little bit, let the red rifle come in for a little bit and toss it all around. Because even with what he did, if you actually look at his actual passing, he was 8 for 26 passing. 18 for 26 passing, against the Chargers.
8 for 26, crazy.
Yeah, sorry about it. 18 for 26. That's not bad necessarily.
Yeah.
But you had 2.5 yards per attempt. And only 84 yards. So that means that he's not trusting going down the field. He's not trusting his protection. He's not stepping into his throws. He was. That game against the Chargers was the first time where I noticed his size being a detriment to him because he had to jump to see over guys and then go. right? And so, and that's causing some inaccuracies with him. So I think that the locker room kind of needed this to happen, but they're not necessarily out on Bryce. I think they just know that he probably just needs a little bit more time to sit back and just develop. And look at Patrick Mahomes. He had a whole year to develop.
Yeah.
We really need to talk about that, like, a lot more. We should stop putting some of these guys out there who are 21, 22, 23 years old and expecting them to take grown men and lead them to playoff appearances in the NFL. What CJ Stroud did was an outlier. But also, I contend if the Carolina Panthers chose him instead of Bryce Young, the same thing that happened to Bryce Young last year would have happened to CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud went to a better situation with the Texans. So, I think that a lot of things you have to take into consideration what is going on with the franchise. And also, like, it's only certain people, only certain special people can come in at a young age and really do well like that in the first year. We really need to start giving people more time to develop, I think, at the quarterback position.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point. I think you look at Kurt Warner, right? He sat behind Trent Green. You look back to, like you said, Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith. Heck, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre. I mean, there's a lot of guys that you see success when they sit out a year and not get thrown into a situation. It's funny that you said C.J. Stroud was in a better situation, because that was not the topic of the conversation once draft night happened. The conversation was Texans suck, Panthers are set up for success. And it's been totally flipped. The whole narrative has been flipped. Deon, you had another question?
No, I'm everything he's saying is just, it makes sense, but it's like, dang, it sounds like he's just suffering from, he still think he's in last year's offense or last year's team, and he's still trying to, oh dang, I got to get this ball out of my hand. Nobody can protect me. And it's like, okay, we got a couple of guys that can take care of you. You got you a couple receivers. But yeah, I as a fan, I was definitely shocked to see that come across my timeline. Like, wow. I'm automatically thinking, especially from Panthers history, they finna trade him, like a CMC, like a Sam
Brian
Darnold,
Burns recently.
Brian
like
Burns, DJ Moore, anybody that's good, we just ship them away.
They're gonna ship them away.
Wait a second, you can make a Pro Bowl? How about you go somewhere else and we get nothing for you?
And Bryce is gonna go to another team and he's gonna look completely different. So that was kind of my style. Like, oh well, okay, well, it just seems to be that's how they like to do business, I guess, over there. But
Dave Canales said today that they weren't interested in trading him, and I hope that is the case, because I think the main thing that this place needs is stability. Yeah. Like, I told you about the quarterback situation from before. Like, if we just run through it really quick, like, after they decide to move on from Cam Newton, they bring in Teddy Bridgewater on a 3-year deal, and after a year said, that's good. And then they trade for Sam Darnold. So now you're sending draft picks to the Jets. And then the next year you trade for Baker Mayfield and you have him with Sam Darnold. And then PJ Walker, when those two are injured, came in and he started. And then you have last year you have Bryce Young come in, and then also Andy Dalton, who started a game last year. Like, it's just been this crazy revolving door. And then I forgot Cam Newton coming back for a cup of coffee and all that. So it's been this crazy revolving door, and like it just felt like for a long time that it just wasn't a plan. Yeah. It was just what David Tepper felt like at that time, which is weird because he comes from Pittsburgh. He was a co-owner for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you think that he learned from them what stability is, but then he's a hedge fund manager. And so if you're a hedge fund manager, that means you're trading on the stock market. You got to learn how to be patient and hit the market and time it at the right time. And so, like, you think the setup is perfect. Like, okay, this person has the right patience. He knows when to hit it and get out of a trade or get into a trade at the right time. But when it comes to football, he knows nothing with what he's doing. And it's crazy. It's ridiculous.
It's evident, right? And you spoke about some of the quarterbacks. Guess what? Sam Darnold's 2-0 right now. Baker Mayfield's 2-0 right now. So they were both Carolina Panthers at some point. So it's crazy how that all panned out. But I just wanted to ask one more question. It was just about the new quarterback, right? I guess Red Rifle. Shout out Texas legend out there in Katy. But where have you seen his new rejuvenated spirit, it feels like, in that locker room? I saw an interview with him in front of some cameras, and he just seemed happy to get the opportunity. He seemed excited to be able to show what he can do with this new head coach and Canales and his offense. Yeah,
I mean, I think the big thing for Andy is that he's 36, going to be 37 soon. and he knows that he's, played more downs than what he has, coming up in front of him, right? So anytime he gets a chance to start, it's a bonus for him because his time in the NFL is really winding down. And the way it looks right now, if he comes out and he balls out Sunday, and then he comes back home against his former team, the Bengals, in Week 4, and balls out then, like, there's going to be a real conversation. He's on the last year of a 2-year deal. There's going to be a real conversation about probably extending him and helping Bryce Young kind of, move along a little bit more if they decide to keep Bryce Young after this year. So I think he's just really excited to be out there. If you guys go out there and look at the passing charts from last year, when he came in for one game in Week 3 at Seattle, a lot of the similarities to this year where Bryce Young was throwing short, and a lot of his passes were either, screens behind the line of scrimmage or within 10 yards. Andy Dalton was letting that thing loose, man. Like, they passed it, like, I think 50 times in that game, and, they still lost, but they were close to coming back and winning. And I think Andy Dalton threw for like 358 or something like that in that game, which I think is still the highest output from last year, if I'm not mistaken, for a passing game. So, like,
the one game he started.
In the one game he started. So, like, I'm expecting him to really let it fly in this game because he has the pedigree, he has the experience, and that's the one thing that the Panthers have been lacking is explosive plays.
Chris, if we're fantasy-wise, if we were to pick one of the receivers, who you think
Thielen,
should,
bro? Gotta be Thielen.
Oh man, I know, I got him. So I'm gonna say that. But
so here's the thing with that: it's hard to say which one because of how bad the passing game has been the last two weeks, right? But I would have thought that Deontay Johnson would have gotten a lot more looks than what he has so far because he's considered one of the best route runners in the NFL, and he gets open, and he has been open during these last few games, but the ball's not finding him. So I would have thought he would have had some big games. I would have thought that there would have been some long explosive plays going to Xavier Leggett, and that he would have had some big time plays. So I'm gonna be real, bro. I don't know what to tell you on this one, bro. And I would say leave it alone right now. Do not go to a Carolina Panther and just feel like you have to depend on them in fantasy this week. Just let them get their stuff together and then revisit it. But I would say the ones to look out for later: Deontay, Xavier Leggett. As far as volume, of course, Adam Thielen, and I'm waiting for the big Jatavian Sanders game. I feel like that's going to come in a certain.
I think so too. That's who I covered here in Texas, and man, his first off catching radius is crazy. His speed at that position is crazy. So when I saw he got to start Week 1, I was like, okay, bet. But of course, we saw again the reasons why he dropped to the 4th round was because he can't block. So he got blown up in that Week 1 match. That was kind of tough to see. And so let's see if his blocking can get better so he can stay on the field for more plays than just passing downs. But yeah, Chris, thank you so much for bringing us that insight. If it's okay with you, can we have you back going throughout the year? That would be awesome to have you on throughout the season.
For sure. Hey, the Carolina Panthers are a big source of my pain these days because I'm from the Carolinas and I've been cheering for this team my entire life. Oh, I'm from here. I remember when they started, bro.
He's watched it all.
I've watched it all. So this is literally the worst time of my life as a Carolina Panthers fan, but I'm willing to come out and talk about it because it's therapy. So thank you for inviting me on to talk about it.
Oh my goodness. I apologize.
All good. I'll do that. We got that report now. We'll do it.
Okay, say less, bro. Hey, where can they see the Panthers playbook?
Yeah, so WRAL here out in Raleigh owns a sports radio station. So myself and my colleague who works over there at 99.9 The Fan, Dennis Cox, we team up on Panthers Playbook. It's the most watched Carolina Panthers podcast. It's on YouTube. So go to YouTube, look up 99.9 The Fan, 99.9 The Fan, and look up Panthers Playbook. We had a whole list there. We did an emergency episode when Bryce Young was benched. And we've been doing episodes after games and also every Thursday. So we'll have a new episode coming out tomorrow from when we're recording this.
Say less, man. Y'all go check that out. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us, man. I can't wait to have you back.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
That was good. Man, I like how Chris was so honest with us about the situation down there. And he seemed to have optimism about Andy Dalton. What do you like about the conversation?
That it might not be over for Bryce. Like I was telling, I think off mic, that I think if they were interested in trading him, I think he's just going to do like what everybody else does and go to another team and revitalize his career. So yeah, I'm like you. Even with you, I know you said that with Bryce, you're shocked to see that he's playing so poorly after what he did in against Texas. So yeah, I think. And that's what I'm excited. I think he is gonna prove everybody wrong, and he a couple years he's gonna be like a Baker, and shit, even like a Sam Darnold. Come and show everybody, hey, I know I played pretty bad, but that wasn't really me. What about you?
I wish he can get a new coach, man. I wish just a fresh start. Like I'm not blaming Canales. I am blaming Frank Wright from last year, and I think that's one thing I took away from that conversation was I had no idea the coaching staff were on different playing fields. Like he said, the quarterback's coach is saying something different than the offensive coordinator was saying something different than the head coach, and it was all people were tallying on each other to the owner and David Tepper. Like it was just complete, utter chaos, bro, the whole time last year. And to have a rookie quarterback with no weapons, by the way, and no offensive line, of course, his confidence is at an all-time low. So that was great insight from Chris for giving us that info about the coaching staff. Just a cluster of chaos out there. And so, yeah, bro, I think that's what I took away. And we'll see if Andy Dalton can turn this thing around or at least make it be more competitive and not get blown out by halftime. So let's move into the next matchup as we got two more to go. This team actually blew out their opponent by halftime last Thursday. Buffalo versus Jacksonville Jaguars. Buffalo's coming off an impressive win over the Dolphins, and the Jags are coming off. Did you see that weather out there in Jack? It was storming. They were just playing in just rain. I can't imagine playing in that. I played in 1 or 2 games in my career in just downpour, and I hated it. You couldn't tackle nobody. Yeah, no. You couldn't move well. Yeah. Jacksonville lost in that type of environment to Cleveland last week. Cleveland's clearly used to those type of weather conditions. And so now I have a matchup with Buffalo this week. 5.5 points, Deon. That's the spread. Who covers? Who doesn't?
Buffalo covers at the crib. I think this is I want to say easy lock, but I think this is a easy one that you can count on. Buffalo covers 5.5.
I agree. I think Buffalo does cover. I just don't like Jacksonville. They haven't shown me nothing. Ever since last year when they went on a nice little run to start the year, I think Trevor Lawrence is 2-11 the past 13 starts. Like, what happened? What happened? I don't think he becomes 3-11. I think he becomes 2-12 after this week. So I got Buffalo as well. Lastly, Washington versus Cincinnati Bengals. 7.5 points for the Commanders. That's how much they're down or underdogs for. I think that's a lot of points, Deon. Who you got in this matchup?
I got to go Bengals. Joe Burrow's record in the first 2 weeks, abysmal. After that, he usually figures it out and starts playing better. And they just lost a heartbreaker to the Chiefs. I think he's coming out on a mission. I think Joe Burrow. Joe Burr is back.
Joe Burr. Nah, I got Washington, bro. I'm not going to lie to you. I think they get up for the game against the Chiefs. Like, that's their Super Bowl. If we're being honest, that's their Super Bowl. And so I just think a fall off is going to be them not taking Washington seriously. I also am considering this is Jaden Daniels' first primetime game. And so he's probably going to want to show out in front of the whole nation knowing that everyone's watching. So 7.5 points is a lot of points. So I'm going to go with Washington covers at 7.5. I don't think they win the game, but I think they cover. And so let's go into our locks of the week. I am currently 2-0, just saying that when it comes to my locks. So whatever I say right now, you better bet it.
I don't get why you feel like that was needed.
I'm just saying.
Let's get to your lock.
I'm just saying, I want to talk my stuff too. Oh, man. Let me talk my shit again. All right, I'm going to go my lock of the week. I'm going to go Tennessee versus Green Bay. I think Tennessee covers at 2.5 points. They have the number 1 defense in the league right now. I know it's crazy that they're 0-2, but they still have the number 1 defense. And so I don't see the Packers moving the ball like they did last week against the Colts on that Tennessee D-line with Tavondre Sweat, with Jeffrey Simmons. And I don't think Will Levis throws a game this week. I think he figures it out against this Packers defense, and he doesn't do anything stupid. So let's hope, fingers crossed, that he doesn't cause them a loss, and pray that my lock is right. So, yeah, I'm going to go Tennessee versus Packers. Tennessee covers 2.5 points.
Lock of the week has to go to, I mean, this week is a little rough with, not as easy as I can't say for me, but I think we're gonna go with Houston. Houston,
okay,
Minnesota.
I was thinking about that. I was looking at that. What do you like about that so much?
I think like you were saying, I think Sam comes back to reality, or comes back to earth. No JJ, and I think Houston is, they're making their way to becoming a dominant team. I think this is one of those games that you say, all right, you've been doing good this season, but let's humble you. Let's make sure that you know that we them boys, we them dogs. So yeah, I got Houston.
Dang, bro. 3.5. Now I'm second guessing, bro. I was literally looking at Houston like, I don't want to be a homer, but to me, it's a good pick. It's a good pick. I think it's a really good pick. So I'm gonna give you that.
I think the JJ thing is really.
Yeah,
I think that's just too big to overcome. I mean,
and no Jordan Addison too, because he's driving reckless. So, yeah.
So
let's not get into that.
That boy Sam gonna be on the island. So yeah, it's gonna be.
Let's not get into that. Let's get into our final thoughts, though, bro. Lastly, with this pod, what do you want to say? What do you want to get off your chest?
Final thoughts. Rough week in fantasy. The injury bug is real. Lost both in my leagues. We're gonna keep it short. It was just rough, man. I got 180. I think 180, 170 put on my head. Barely hit 100. Yeah, it was a rough week. What about you?
I feel you. Same. I had to go against Kamara this week, and while I went against Kamara, I had 3 dudes get hurt. So it's not my week last week. I got 9 dudes with at least a questionable or an out, or IR, or PUP. Something injury-wise, I have 9 dudes on my roster with something next to your name. So praying for healing, right? Yeah, and we'll see what happens after that. But anyways.
My week was over on Thursday. Golly.
God. We don't love it, bro. We're torturing ourselves. We're not going to torture you anymore with this pod, though. So let's get out of here. As always, Deon.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. Stay up to date with Mose Knows by subscribing to Cory Mose on YouTube or simply searching Mose Knows on Spotify or Apple Music. Thanks for listening and have a great week.